Something. How are you doing? Welcome to our show. Did y'all see our wonderful jingle?
I like it.
I may have to solicit a thumbs up or thumbs down from the audience. I don't know. We may have had one naysayer, but anyway, welcome, Dr. Doug Lisle, and everyone. Welcome to our initial live event of the Montgomery Heart and Wellness community. It's Optimal Health Community, and just words of introduction here. I'm Dr. Montgomery. Those of you may not have met me. I'm Director of Montgomery Heart and Wellness, and our special guest is the one and only Dr. Doug Lisle, who's going to help us go through some of the intricacies of the psychology. And today we're going to ask him to be a little bit of a sociologist and help us work through our old issues with getting healthy. There's not a shortage of information. There's oftentimes a shortage of motivation and a shortage of the ability to get to that next step. And Dr. Lisle is a PhD in psychology, and he lectures at the True North, has done so for over 30 years. And I've had the pleasure of visiting with him and lecturing with him. He's been here in Houston a couple of times, and I've lectured with him in other parts of the country, and you are in for a treat today. So welcome, Dr. Lisle. Welcome to our inaugural event. And I want to welcome everybody who's in the, some people in the waiting room. I'll let you guys in as well. And also let us know if you're not hearing us too well. So we checked our mics and everything and speakers, but hopefully everyone knows how to use the device. You have the reaction device at the bottom, and I'll give you a quick little run through. You can click on the reactions. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a conversation with Dr. Lisle, and we're going to go through this concept of the psychological benefits of community support. And so without any further delay, Dr. Lisle, before I get into this first question, and I shared the talking points with you, I looked at a number of your talks, and there was one that you were giving a talk in a small group, and you gave them 3 tips. One thing, he says, clean up your environment. The other thing is get organized, run your life, your food life like a restaurant. And of course, the social part I thought was pretty interesting is that he said, shut up. so I'm gonna put those things. So we're gonna put those on the bulletin board up here. I also looked at a TED talk of yours, and I made a few notes here, and I'm gonna throw these things out because I want to put them in the background as we get into this whole thing of the sociology of community support, because these are clearly psychological things. But you mentioned some interesting things. You mentioned as creatures, we seek pleasure, number one. We try to avoid pain, and we try to conserve energy. Now, I remember those from many of your talks in the past. And then you said something, the last point I'll make is that you talked about how feelings are signals, they're good and bad. And the behavior to some extent feed into our genes in terms of, feeding what genes that are there. So I just put those in the backdrop of some things that you normally talk about. And when we get into this whole concept of psychological aspects of community support, I'd like to see if we can tie those things in. So first and foremost, we are forming a community here for the purpose of helping people out. In terms of helping them meet their optimized health goals. What are some of the psychological benefits of community, and how can it help individuals meet their goals?
Well, I like to say that there's really 2 kind of major problems when it comes to trying to go in a healthy direction. The first thing is what I call the pleasure trap, which is the fact that we were designed to seek out the most pleasurable aspects of nature that we could find, and that chocolate bars and chocolate cake and Coca-Cola and French fries aren't part of nature. So,
Boy, darn.
So what we've done is, I call it clumsy ingenuity, that brilliant human beings over the centuries have figured out what to isolate the chemicals that cause the pleasure mechanisms. And then we basically make our food out of those things. So we're supposed to have a little bit of sugar and a little bit of fat and a little bit of salt in our food by nature. But if we pour it in there artificially, then we get a huge pleasure response. And so that creates a false signal, and it lures people to do things that are not in their best interest. So that's the pleasure trap. I call it, it's very hard to learn our way out of that. We got an adult audience here, if we don't have any little kids. It's like basically if you're trying to learn to ride a bicycle and every time you fell off, you had an orgasm, that's what it would be very difficult to learn how to ride that bicycle well.
Exactly.
That's kind of what this is like. It's like so that's one problem, and that's a giant problem. But the second problem that you talk about is community. And really, we're not creatures we're not wolverines that go out into the wild and there's one wolverine per 50,000 acres and it eats by itself. We eat with other people. We can eat solitarily, but we very often don't. And even if these days, even if you're eating by yourself, your friends want you to take a picture and post it on Instagram while you ate. So food is very social for people. It always has been, and it's part of our nature. And so if we are doing something very differently than the rest of our tribe, we're in trouble. It's going to feel very isolating, and we're going to feel like we're essentially kind of doing something wrong. And even if we're really convinced that we're right, then our next move is often to sort of argue and educate. And then that runs into a whole set of problems in its own right. Because remember, these people are falling off the bicycle and having orgasms. I mean, they're not going to believe us, or they're not going to embrace us. Not everybody ever makes this attempt. And some people who might make an attempt to do this will often do so in their own good time, according to their own clock. And so our clock and their clocks aren't, often in synchrony. And that's why a community like what you're trying to do, or to build a community of people that are on the same page at the same time, that can be a super useful thing. There's some big features to human nature that are, we sort of know and we sort of don't know technically. But one of them is a concept called self-efficacy. And self-efficacy is the notion that we believe that we can do something. It's very much, anybody normal would call it self-confidence, but the guy who invented the term did it for a reason. His name was Albert Bandura. He's a famous psychologist, Stanford professor. Self-efficacy is the belief that you can do something. Self-confidence is the feeling that comes from that belief. So you can't just feel confident. In order to feel confident, you had to believe that you could do something. Doesn't do any good to say, well, just be confident. I remember hearing some basketball coach tell me when I was a kid, just shoot with confidence. Like, well, I can't shoot with confidence if I think I'm going to miss it. And so so the self-efficacy winds up being the key, which is that, do you believe that you can do this? Now, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Everyone mute their speakers except the speaker, if you will, please. Let's see here.
Well, he said he's trying to make sure they.
Hold on a second. Are we okay now?
I think we're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So you can imagine what it would be like going to, like, let's suppose your first week in junior high school, where you had to go to the different classes and it's a little bit intimidating. And then you find out that like 2/3 of the people said, well, I just can't do it. And they're just crying in the hallways and they just throw their hands up. It's like, well, if that were true, you'd be pretty freaked out. And if it turned out that as you were going through high school, like as you started, algebra, like 80% of the kids just quit showing up. They're like, oh, I can't do it. There's no point in it. If you watched everybody around you just quit and not do things, then you would feel like, well, geez, I'm not sure I could do it either. It's getting a little tough. I think I'll quit. So we don't appreciate generally how important it is to observe other people around us succeeding. It's a super important thing. It has a huge impact on our self-confidence. And so this is where community can be such a big deal, because often you get that sense of community in your own house. So your dad or your mom says, you can do this. I did that. You know, I know it was tough that first few weeks of high school, but hey, you'll get used to it. You'll meet some kids. It's like they're super encouraging, and they will tell you, I know what you're going through. You can do this. There's no doubt about it. I have complete confidence in you. Well, that makes a big difference. Okay, you can imagine if your mom said, I don't know if you're going to cut it. I didn't. I bailed out of there. I tried 3 times, and I just finally had to just go live with my grandmother because I couldn't handle it. It's like, whoa, what would you feel like then? Okay.
See,
so usually, yeah.
no, it's interesting. You mentioned that, and the whole thing with the family, because the family is a tribe. It seems like we all may have multiple tribes.
Yes.
And so you said something interesting related to community. If you got a group of people doing the wrong thing, you don't want to argue and educate.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing? So let's say, for instance, I can't change my family. I've got family that won't eat right. They're not going to exercise. My people at work, they're not going to eat right. Is there a way I can select or create a competing community that I can go to? Maybe it's called a safe space community. Share the potential dynamics of that.
That's huge. Okay. That's everybody that ever tried to get away from alcohol and had to get away from their family and their friends, and essentially lay down some rules with those people. And then they go to AA and they join a group of people that are like, yeah, this is the most important thing that I ever do, is to do this. So it is a huge deal, as you say. One of the problems with the pleasure trap is very often our own families are not going to be on board. I mean, it's incredible if they are. It is a fantastic thing if they are. But if they aren't, like, well, we're not going to make them. You know what I'm saying? So that's not going to fly. And so, if our friends are also like, no, you know, George, you're going to go off onto this wacky stuff. My doctor just says I take my metformin and I'm going to be fine. And no, everything's cool. I'm fine. It's like, well, if that's your friends, don't be surprised. Because remember, they're falling off bicycles and having orgasms. There's no way that the average person is going to be this motivated. So if you happen to be somebody that is, it's very likely that you are fairly isolated. Okay, and you could be at odds with your tribe, and that's why a new tribe. You know, sometimes, Doc, all it takes is one person. It takes sometimes one friend that says, oh boy, do I know what you're trying to do. I'm trying to do this too. And I'm having some success. And of course, it's huge if you can have a group. If people can find a dozen people that they can meet with once a month and have a potluck, that can be a huge thing for people. Because now it's like, hey, there's 12 other people you know that are doing this at varying degrees of success, but they absolutely, all of them feel like it's worth it, even though half of them might be really struggling at any one time. But they're showing their determination to continue on this path. And so they come and they have a rotating potluck or whatever it is, a place that they meet. And this basically tells you, hey, I'm not crazy. You know, everybody else tells me I'm crazy, but these people don't tell I'm crazy. And everything we talk about and all the stuff that we do, it all makes perfect sense. And I understand why the rest of my surrounding community doesn't get it. In other words, because of the pleasure trap. You know, if it turned out that really healthy food and really unhealthy food were basically the same in terms of how much dopamine they cause to fire in the pleasure centers of the brain. If that were true, it was just a matter of education, which one to eat, then we wouldn't have a problem.
Wow.
That is not the problem.
Wow.
The problem is this is sort of cocaine, no cocaine, and we've got a cocaine addict. We're like, hey, listen, why don't you just snort baking powder? It's pretty much the same. And it's like, no, it's not. Okay.
So it's a shortcut that you go through. Now, I want to pivot into, I'm faced with people who are in the sick care environment. And so, and the aspect of community is that oftentimes they're in the medical community. And many of my colleagues, the page where you've got to take these medications, you're going to be sick for the rest of your life, you've got to do this. And it's even worse when you're in a hospital because, everybody has a doom and gloom, sentence. I mean, it's like, well, I don't know, you're pretty sick, you're not going to make it. There's little hope, and they don't want to give any false hope. They want to give no hope. And so, first question is this: the psychological perspective regarding what are the major shortcomings of our current sick care system and the way we manage chronic illnesses from a psychological perspective, or perhaps psychosocial or sociological perspective?
It's a disaster. Okay? It's exactly what you say. It's people will go into their doctor and they'll be depressed because maybe their career isn't going so well, or their relationship's not going so well, or something in life is a struggle, and they're feeling it, and they haven't got a good solution yet. And they get labeled, quote, depressed. And the doctor says, well, you need to take these medications. And well, how long? Well, maybe for the rest of your life. It's like, holy smokes, what is that? And so that I can't tell you how many times I've had people on the other end of a phone call telling me that the doctors told them that they had to be on this or that for the rest of their life. It's insanity. And the same thing is true with most of these physical medications. I mean, you're a cardiologist. You know that there is a time and a place where medications are useful, and that's probably 1/10 of the time they're being used.
Yeah, at most 1/10 of the time. It's an interesting thing you mentioned, the someone who has a situation where they are, they have a life event and they're feeling down of the life event. I remember that's really not depression. That's really an appropriate response to a life event. But they get prescribed antidepressants or anxiolytics or whatever the case is. And so it's interesting you brought up that example. And then that only furthers not only side effects from the drugs, but further, reinforcing that whole issue.
Yes. And, the whole medical system, it's basically like you've got a village living on a river, and the river's polluted. And everybody's drinking this polluted water and getting sick. And then they're taking these really powerful herbs or some weird medicine to try to treat the symptoms. It's like, really, everybody? The problem is the water's bad. You're being poisoned, for God's sakes. The solution isn't some fancy medication. The solution is to get rid of the poison. And we're being poisoned by the food. So when you see somebody, walking around with 50 extra pounds on them and moseying into CVS to get their metformin, it's like you're looking at somebody dying of food poisoning.
Yeah.
And it's like the medication is just pitiful. I mean, is it overall helpful? Well, maybe they're better off with it than without it. But geez, that's like saying the person on the river is better off taking the antibacterial that would otherwise kill them. Like, yeah, but the problem is the dirty water. The problem is the food poisoning.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure if they're better off with it without it. I mean, there's some kinds of, if there's an acute pain or something, we can quiet it down in rare cases, but I think a lot of cases it may be worse with it. Many of our listeners and certainly many of my patients are deal with certain specific issues, and I'm going to run down some clinical scenarios and find out if or how community support can help these. I'm kind of rattle them off real quick and let you address them. Sure. So in the context of an individual who has a chronic illness, who is maybe acutely ill, Let's say someone in scenario one who's acutely ill in the ICU or recovering from a major surgery, they're in the hospital and they're sick. That's one. Or perhaps a middle-aged person with a stable chronic illness is on a bunch of medications. A third one will be a young middle-aged person without chronic illness, but wanting to prevent chronic illness. Maybe have family members who have diabetes and heart disease and the like, and they're trying to prevent these things.
Yeah.
And the last one is someone wanting to or needing to improve their physical or mental performance. Let's say they're kind of healthy, but they're trying to do something extraordinary, train for a marathon or learn ballet or learn a different language. So give us how community or if community can help those areas. And I give that spectrum because I look at all those things as part of the spectrum of optimal health, whether you're trying to recover from acute illness or you're trying to increase your life performance.
Yeah, I would say that somebody that's in deep trouble. I mean, sometimes community is essential because they may need somebody to actually cart some food in for them that they can eat it. I mean, I've had people that were in trouble and they were going to wind up with some nasty procedure, but it was essential that they had a day or two of decent food before they went into that thing, and that could make a difference in their outcomes. So so just getting help when you're in real trouble, that's a super important aspect of community. But the biggest, most important aspect of community is actually a reaffirmation that you are on the right path. This is, how difficult that particular path is for you, knowing that you've got a group of people that is committed to being on this path and that you understand that they're doing this not because they're showing off or not because they're trying to demonstrate incredible iron will, but rather that they know the truth. And the truth is that the problems that I'm having physically are very likely to be due to the varying degrees of struggle that I have with the pleasure trap. And that it's really about me, trying to find my way in a jungle where everybody's going the wrong direction. I mean, we've all seen these bizarre crowd scenes somewhere in cinema where everybody's going one way and you're trying to go the other way. It's like, whoa, where are you going? That must be Godzilla on the other side because everybody's running this way and you're thinking, no, they're all wrong. It's like, boy, does it help you tremendously to have half a dozen people with you saying, yeah, they're all crazy. We have to go this way. It's like, wow. You don't want to be out there by yourself psychologically. And that is a huge value of community. Doc, one of the great studies in psychology was done in the late 1950s on conformity. And it was done by a man named Solomon Asch. So because his name was Solomon, we all know he was wise.
Let's all go for a name change.
Yeah. And what he found was if you would take a group of people and put them in a circle around a table and draw a couple of lines on the chalkboard that were pretty close to how, that line A was just a little bit longer than line B. And he would start with one person and say, which is the longest line? And they would say A, and they'd go around this table. The table was set up that everybody at that table, they'd have like 8 people at that table, and 7 of those people were setups. In other words, they knew the game. There was only one person that was the real subject in the study, and they'd embed them like halfway around the circle. So they'd start this, and they'd have A be the longest line, and the experimenter would say, well, what's the longest line? And the first person would say A, and they'd go, what about you? The longest line, A. And they go around the circle, and of course our guy would say A, because and they're looking around like, this is the stupidest study in history. And they say, well, it's a study on, visual perception, and we're just trying to make sure that everybody sees things in the same way. So then they do the next line, and they make B longer than A a little bit. They'd say, which longest line? And our first guy would say B, and B, 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 B all the way around. And then on the third trial, they draw 2 more lines like B and C. And C would be a little bit longer than B, tiny bit. Hard to tell, but you could tell. And they'd say, okay, which is the longest line? And the first guy would say B. And the real subject, who's like 4 or 5 deep in the circle, would be like, whoa, what just happened? And then the next person would say B, 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 all the way around to him. Now what's he going to do? It's like, is he going to say what everybody else says? Or is he going to say what his own eyes are telling him? And it turns out that like 80% of people will say B. It's like, oh my God.
What percentage? 85?
Yeah, I think it's about 80. So
Oh, wow.
words, the vast majority of people will say B, even though it's clearly wrong. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So then they do the same study, and they do it where the first person says B, second person says B, third person says B, the fourth person says C, the right answer. Then, in other words, an embedded person. Then the fifth person says B, the sixth person says B. It finally gets to our guy. Now he's had one person has said what it is that he knows is true. Now the question is, how many people now say the right answer? And it turns out it's like 90%.
Whoa, one person
So
switches.
one person tremendously switches how much guts we have.
What's the name of that study? I want
It's
to.
called Studies in Conformity by Solomon Asch, A-S-C-H. This is one of the great studies in the history of psychology. And
I'm just going to let the audience know. I'm going to find that and share that with the community. That's fascinating.
Great. We'll probably have the numbers. I probably got the numbers wrong, so everybody's going to say you got them wrong.
we're not doing this to check you. We're just.
I'm just kidding. My memory is now saying it might be 65% to 15%, something like that. But I get something I can't quite remember. Actually, Dr. Asch did many different experiments. So sometimes he made the groups as big as 24, and then sometimes he brought them down as low as 4. So he did many different sort of permutations of this. But what we saw is a huge, 2 big lessons from the study. Number one, if there's a big bunch of people all saying the wrong thing, and we're all by ourselves, we'll say this wrong thing too. We're just going to be intimidated by the group, okay? Unless you're a Baxter Montgomery or you're John McDougall, then you don't care what anybody says. Sticks up for what we think is right. Suddenly we are way tougher. Okay, so it means that human beings by themselves against the crowd are in trouble. Human beings with a little bit of community with them suddenly get way tough, and that's why for everything that Dr. Montgomery is talking about, community is so important because it really increases. It basically, as my friend Alan Goldhammer says, it shoves a ramrod up your spine.
Wow, that's impressive. You know, and that's something like your colleague would say. But as we get ready to close out, I want to ask the audience to throw any questions you have in the chat, and I'll read them out toward the end. We're running close on our time, but the interesting follow-up to that, and I want to make sure I got the right, Studies in Conformity by Solomon Asch. If I Google that, I should find those. So we're going to look into that. I may share some presentations with our community. How important is, so let's say, for instance, you have that one person that tells you that one time that what you're doing is right, and that sways you.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I heard my patients say, I need to come back for more sermons.
Yes.
What do we know about the data on the need for continued reaffirmation from the community?
Oh, I don't think that anybody has data on that, but I think that we can obviously understand that your sense of your own sort of safety in going against the grain depends a lot on having that reaffirmed. You can't you can't just go it alone. Some people can, but you need to. I can't tell you how many people that will tell me the following story: that they read a book by Dr. McDougall 25 years ago, and then they did it for a while. Then they went off course. Then they did Atkins. Then they did a Beverly Hills diet. Then they did keto. Then they did this. And then they came back to us. Okay. And it's like, well, now they really do see, and now they're really going to do this. Well, one reason that happened is they didn't have any community. Like they actually had found the right answer, but the right answer, everybody else is telling you, go ahead and fall off the bicycle and have an orgasm. And our people are saying, no, you got to like do this the right way. I used to say that I had a lady in the McDougall program that said, okay, I think I got it now, doc. I said, okay, what are you saying? She said, okay, here's the deal. If I eat that food and it's like, that's good food. But if I take a bite out of it and it's like, then I'm in trouble. I said, that's it. If that happens, you're in trouble. And so that's what we're competing with. And so as a result, the best we can do with really healthy food is a feeling that it's solid and it's tasty and it's good. But it's not crack. Okay, that's the problem. And so we're competing against the equivalent of crack. And so, of course, we're going to be out there by ourselves. And if you don't have a community with you that's going along with you, that you can keep checking, and it's like, it's right to not take crack, right? Like you need some people to reaffirm that, because the crack dealers are everywhere.
Yes.
You can't drive your car for a mile in the United States and not hit a crack dealer.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're dealing with, and that's why it is that your emphasis on community is super important.
Wow. I really thank you for your time. And, this is amazing. As always, I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes here. Any final words of encouragement to our group that's here? Anything you want to say? You're filled with so much insight.
Well, I'm hoping that your group has a way virtual is good, but if people can find a way to get face to face once in a while with each other and sit down and share some food, and if they can do that, if you can organize that in your life even once in a while, this is like super big for people. This is just a reaffirmation that I'm not out here alone, and that there's people that are walking this walk and doing their very best to go this direction, just like I am. And that we can all, at places like that, we all know we're not perfect. But that's good to know that there's people that despite the challenges of the pleasure trap, that we're going to be there, that it's still worth the fight, and it's worth, going this direction. That's a super important thing for everybody to have, and to have that community be support periodically, I think is really important.
Wow. I really like that comment. And just as a dovetail to that, to our community, we're just launching. As we go forward, we do plan to have live events. Many of you here in Houston, and others will be other parts of the country. Dr. Lisle is a witness. We've had live events before, certainly pre-COVID, and we will bring them back. And as our community grows, we'll be scheduling maybe quarterly or semi-annual events where we do get together and have community-wide events. So I agree with that. You're right on as usual. And again, thanks again. And we'll probably invite you to one of these events again. So we look forward to seeing you in person and what have you. But everybody give Dr. Lisle a digital applause. You have your reactions there. We do appreciate everything you've said and shared with us today, and we'll be sharing this information with our community. So until next time, Doug, I'll see you. Have a good one.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. It's good to see everybody.
Okay, I'll see y'all at the next event, guys.